This is WeBurlesque.
Hello, and welcome to WEView, part of the WEBurlesque podcast network. I am your guest host, Bebe Demure. May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And to celebrate, we are bringing you a series of episodes that shine the spotlight on a special lineup of performers. And that's right, it's a FilAm Takeover. This is the third episode of the series featuring all Filipino-American burlesque performers. As we know, burlesque is the art of sensuality and storytelling. Combine that with our identity and experiences as Filipino Americans, it can be complicated, powerful, and revolutionary. I'm excited to talk with the incredible performers in the lineup of the show with me today. So we're going to discuss what it means to take up space on stage while embracing our culture and history. Let's get into it. I want to have everyone introduce themselves, name, pronouns, and city you hail from.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lady Mabuhay. I go by she, her, hers, and I hail from New York City. I have been doing burlesque for about 10 years now.
All right, Lady. I just saw you recently at an all-Filipino burlesque show earlier, like just a week ago. So I love that I get to see you, talk to you so much this week. And on the topic of being Filipino, how great.
Exactly.
Yeah. Who wants to go next?
Happy to go next. I am Leche Flan. My pronouns are she, her, and I am based out of Nashville, Tennessee. And actually, I wanted to go next because I'm on the other end of the spectrum of performing. I have only been in the burlesque performing scene for about 2 years. So I'm also just here to learn from you all and to garner some wisdom because I'm a noob. Thanks for having me.
Nice to meet you. Yeah, I haven't been able to connect with you before, so this is something that I really like about doing this kind of podcast and just networking in general. So nice to meet you, and like you said, getting to connect across the experiences. I guess like seniority, or like from brand new to very seasoned. And last but not least.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Maha Jera. I go by they, them pronouns, and I hail from Columbus, Ohio. I've been doing drag for about 8 years. And then Columbus, Ohio has a very large burlesque scene. And I've been toying with burlesque for about 4 or 5 years now. So thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, good to see you again, Maha.
Good to see you too. Me and Lady were just talking about like the last show we were all together in 3 years ago.
Oh my gosh, I know. Yeah, so Maha was in my all Filipino show, Bonga. What? Gosh, was that really 3 years ago? Wow. Yeah, doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And that was also a very special experience for me, one of celebration as well. So like I said, I'm Bebe Demure. I'm based out of Roanoke, Virginia. For now, I'm on my way to Boston. I'm moving there this summer. And I've been doing burlesque for almost 8 years now. And I've been producing like about 5 years now. So it's been cool to, curate shows like the one I was talking about earlier, Bonga Burlesque, which is an all-Filipino burlesque show, the first one in Virginia. And I hope to continue doing that, when I move out to Boston. So let's bring out the first question, which is an icebreaker discussion about how each of us incorporates the Filipino culture in our art, burlesque, drag, whatever it is that we do.
I can start. So how I incorporate Filipino culture in my drag, I kind of do it like any way I can and any way I feel. So I have made costumes like your typical drag costumes, inspired with like the Filipiniana sleeves. So I learned how to make those, and I've incorporated that into my closet. And with drag performances, I've used some Filipino songs. I've used some Regine Velasquez. I've used there's this new Filipino pop group called Beanie. So I've done one of their songs for a pride show that we had here in Columbus a couple of years ago. So being able to incorporate like Filipino music, whether it be like modern or like the kind of music that we grew up hearing at like while we're singing karaoke, those kinds of things. So that's the way that I incorporate Filipino culture into my drag.
I love that. I think as a people, we're really great at taking what is, I guess, popular and adapting it to who we are. Like you said, popular music. Like my parents love disco, and they would always play disco music, whether it was Earth, Wind, and Fire or the Bee Gees, but then they would also play Filipino disco music. So I think we're adaptable and so joyful in celebrating us still in what is, popular at the time. And I think that makes us very special that way. And I love that you're absolutely doing that with your art too. Anyone else?
Go next. So, like I said, only been performing for 2 years, but I started as a pinup model, costumer, and cosplayer. And Filipino fashion I'm so passionate about it. And I also sew Filipiniana and lampais and just try to incorporate that in my own wardrobe. But I also just wanted to bring more Filipino pop culture icons. And so I debuted with Jollibee. And I pretty much have branded my type of burlesque as more of like nerdlesque, but also I call it stripping karaoke. And because karaoke is such a big thing, and I have primarily done sing and strips on stage, and I have done songs in Tagalog, and I'm sure, family members who hear me rehearsing or come to performances will give me a lot of crap for my pronunciation, but I'm working on it. And I love Polita Corrales, may she rest in peace. And so I've done quite a few songs from her, and also love Bruno Mars too, and the new record. I just feel so seen from it, even though it has Latino influences. There's just something like inherently Filipino about the way he performs, and so that's how I incorporate it. I also have done Filipino folk dancing most of my entire life, and even when I rehearse, I could hear my auntie Gussie just telling me like, you need your hands to be more graceful, and so I try to incorporate the folk dancing that she has taught me throughout my childhood in my performance.
I love that. When you mentioned Jollibee, like I love how many Filipino performers that I know that have a Jollibee act now. I think it was at the show this week, we were talking about how we need to do a night, like the night of 100 Jollibees or whatever, and just have all of you do like your Jollibee acts and then like serve Jollibee, and like that would be an amazing show. And of course karaoke. I mean, one thing that I love too about us is that we are performers through and through, whether we, take it professionally or even as a hobby. Like I've seen my family members put on a show in the living room with their favorite karaoke song. But then also like what you were saying about, bringing the big bubbly character of Jollibee to the stage. I'll drop in a little bit of like how I bring Filipino culture to my performances is that I think we're also really good at just naturally being campy. Like we're so cheeky with our jokes naturally. I mean, you see those pictures of like Filipino storefronts with puns in them, and like, I mean, and we just grew up with that humor and the comedy just naturally flowing into our daily life, and I think that's what makes our subversive art of drag or burlesque um, almost come naturally to us, of like how we're able to camp it up. So I've never thought myself as a funny person, but lately I've been leaning into more comedic like themed acts, but still with like a classic burlesque silhouette. So I think I've been really relying on my Filipino background of humor and comedy for that. What about you, lady?
Well, I gotta say you do a really good job of that, as I've been seeing on your Instagram. So the way I incorporate my Filipino-ness in burlesque is that it starts with my introduction, my name. I have the host always say, always have the audience raise their glasses and then say mabuhay, because it means a toast to life. And that is my entrance, and that's like the clue to the audience that is that it's a Filipina coming out. Whether they indicate that it's a Filipino word or not, that I'm perfectly happy to, tell people that, what it means or what the derivation is from. But you can also just see that I'm some kind of Asian, right? And, if you guess that it's Filipino, that's the first flag on the ground that I kind of want to come on stage with. It's just me entering, me taking up space on stage as Filipino. And the other thing is what we were just talking about, where I produced with my co-producer, Stiletto Sinclair, the first all Filipinx burlesque show in New York City, which, yes, Bebe was in. And, we had karaoke during intermission, and half the audience came on stage. It was so fun. And I loved that it wasn't just the focus on the performers. Because the audience came on stage to do karaoke, it felt like community. So that's what I really wanted to emphasize with having this sense of Filipino-ness, not just for my for the show or my act per se, but for the whole atmosphere of the show.
You absolutely do that, like you bring people in, like you said, right from your intro, having the toast, and then with how you ran the show. I mean, as a culture, we are a community-based culture, and I mean, we see it and we feel it whenever we even recognize another Filipino out in the wild. Like, we might have never seen them before, met them before, but I mean, we just go, Filipino ka ba? And like, it's like, oh, hey, like instant, like we passed through so many like barriers already with just like that recognition and that sense of community already. And that was absolutely felt that night. Like, you brought people into our culture and our community, and that was so beautiful. I loved that. Yeah, that was a great introduction to how we are all bringing our Filipino-ness into our art. And I also love, lady, how you said just showing up on stage. We are Filipino, and that is, how we incorporate who we are already. Okay, how about we get into the first discussion question? When is the first time you've seen yourself represented on stage? I'll go first. I immediately thought of Lea Salonga, who, like, my mom was so quick to point out that she's Filipino, and she was the singing voice for Jasmine and Mulan, right? Is that right? Yeah. So, I was immediately, I was a Disney kid growing up. I'm still like a Disney person. So I just was immediately gravitated towards those movies even more than the fact that just like they're Asian princesses. And like now that I know that the singing is by a Filipino singer, I'm just like, oh, I love this even more. And um every single time, Lea Salonga came up in a conversation, I just was like, I love her voice. She's Jasmine. She's Mulan. And I knew that we could be, that was like kind of like my clue that we could be anything really. And go as far as Disney, right? Because she had been performing, and I didn't find this out till I got a little bit older and researched a little bit more about her. She'd been in Broadway and other, theatrical productions, but then, she made it to Disney. Her name really got out there with that, but that really got me interested and inspired really to be like, yeah, we can do anything.
I'm happy to go next. Because Lea Salonga was also my introduction to Filipinos on stage. However, and the same thing, I'm a huge Disney kid, go to Dapper Day every year, just like love to at least do one Lea Salonga costume when I go to Disney to represent for her. But I will also have to bring up another Filipino that was on stage, and that's Prince Charming himself from Brandy's Cinderella, Paolo Montalban. Yes, he was so handsome. And, I think that whole movie changed things for me with that type of casting, because it was like, okay, we could be in the leads, we could be singing. It doesn't matter what color we are, what kind of background we're from. And it was such an inspiration. As far as like who I've seen in burlesque, I don't know who the producer was, and maybe Lady Mabuhay knows because she was part of that. But Las Filipinas Burlesque was actually one of the big things that inspired me to get into burlesque. It was like a series of shows, I think, in the late 2010s. And that was like the first time I saw myself represented in the art form itself. So love it.
I'm happy to go next. I loved everyone's tribute to Lea Salonga because I also was a Disney kid growing up. But I have like a two-parter to this. Excuse me. I have a two-parter to this answer. So in Columbus, we have a large production show called Stadium Virginium, but also like a lot of the drag entertainers, specifically the West family, they have production shows like all throughout the year. But when I started going out, this was like late 2017, maybe early 2018. I saw an Asian entertainer for the first time, like on stage, and we have like a really big nightclub here in Columbus called Axos. And his name is Alexander Chang, and he's a male entertainer here in Columbus, and he's half Taiwanese. And that was the first time I've ever seen like an Asian American like on a stage with like drag entertainers, because I was like trying to see, how do I fit in like with the drag entertainers here in Columbus, and like being able to see a male lead, an Asian American as a lead in a show, I was like, well, things for me could be possible. So I just wanted to shout out Alexander Chang. He no longer performs, but that's cool. I love him anyway. But yeah, just seeing him on stage made me realize that things were possible. And then the second part of this answer, I was thinking about like popular media. So in terms of like just Asian Americans as a whole, I remember being a kid and my mom and her husband took me out to go see Fast and the Furious 2. And I saw Devon Aoki in the movie, and like seeing an Asian woman as a lead being sexy and being like owning her sexuality and like driving a fucking car, like racing cars. Like I thought that was really cool. So like growing up, like a lot of my mom's husband's friends, like they would work on cars as if they really knew what they were doing. They didn't know what they were doing. But they would work on cars trying to be like Fast and the Furious. And I remember like watching that movie over and over just because I wanted to be Devon Aoki. I even had a poster of her in my room, and like it was supposed to be like, oh, like I think she's really hot. Like I'm just hiding the fact that I'm queer. Like no, I wanted to be her. Like I vowed to myself that I'm gonna like grow up to be her. I'm gonna have like that bone straight hair. I'm gonna wear like leather chaps and like do all that. Like she really did it for me. Like she was that girl to me, like growing up. So that was when I saw Asian representation like in a movie and also like here in Columbus, like with our nightlife culture.
Maha, I'm really glad that you mentioned like a local like representation, because I know it can be really hard to see yourself represented on stage, especially when it's so like zoomed in to where you live. I know I like when we did when you came to do my show, we talked about, you know, living in a predominantly white area and how hard that is. And
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up, I was a classically trained ballet dancer, and I looked up to this one dancer at my studio. She was also Filipino, and I thought she was just the shit, like amazing. And I wanted to be her, and it was just amazing that she was already, you know, one of the best dancers in the studio, and she was also Filipino, and amazing calves because hey, we got Filipino calves, and it's just like it when especially in an art form like ballet, where again very white, and I felt connected to her, and you know she you know our moms talked, and you know she would, you know, be like, oh hi, she would even say hi to me in the studio, and she's like, oh my gosh, she said hi to me, like one of those things. But you know, like it meant so much to me as a little Filipino girl in this ballet studio looking up to her, and she went off to be a cheerleader for the Washington football team, and it like I still, you know, looked up to her in going for what she wanted and achieving so much. But yeah, thank you for, you know, bringing it local too. Lady, do you have yeah?
I do. I think my first um the first time I saw Filipino representation, it was on the screen, and I think it was Lou Diamond Phillips in La Bamba. Even though you know he's portraying a Mexican singer, my mom kept telling me, "Ne Filipino deta," or whatever, and I was like, okay, and you know I'm young and naive, and I'm like, why did they have a Filipino person portraying, you know, a Mexican singer? But it also just kind of occurred to me that very vaguely, I think this is like the only Filipino actor I've ever seen in the media, and I think that was it. There were others like Tia Carrere in Wayne's World, but it was still so far and few between.
Yeah, we always have to be like, as soon as we find out someone's Filipino, I don't know if your families are like this, but I know my family's like, oh, you know they're Filipino, right? Like Vanessa Hudgens, oh, you know she's Filipino, right? Like because like you said, it, you know, there was a time where we weren't represented in media, like pop culture. So like it was a big deal to point out who we are, you know, on the big screen in on our selling records and stuff like that. So yeah.
also, it's so I was growing up in the 90s. It's very common for Filipino actors and actresses to portray another heritage. And I don't know if it's still like that now. I think but it was definitely, those were the roles that a lot of, from what I had heard, I'm not an actor, that a lot of Filipino actors and actresses got another ethnicity, and usually background roles too. So it was really a big thing for someone like Lou Diamond Phillips, for Tia Carrere and other Filipinos to have lead roles.
Yeah, it is a big deal. And I love seeing that we are now, the progression and of who we are, and now that we're being represented as who we are. Like, I think it's like one of the new Spider-Man movies, like his best friend is Filipino. And yeah, I was just like, what? And they speak Tagalog in it. I was like, what? It was very cool to see the culture and the identity fully embraced that way on the big screen. And I just saw recently, speaking of like big screen Filipino representation, this week DreamWorks is coming out with a Filipino movie, and they just dropped the official trailer. I'm so excited. Like, I've never been like more pressed to go see a movie on the day that it comes out. Like, I'm gonna be there.
I like saw the trailer on Instagram and I sent it to my drag kids. I'm like, I don't care where y'all are coming from, because I have one drag kid. He's all the way in Bowling Green, which is like 2 hours away from Columbus. And then my drag daughter, she's like an hour away from me. I'm like, y'all need to come up and watch this movie with me, because like we're in there. There's another movie that like I was super excited to go see. It was like really recent. Do y'all remember Easter Sunday?
Joe
yeah,
Coy.
With Joe Coy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so like my partner, they're not Filipino, but like I dragged them to go see it with me. I'm like, I at least want to go see it. Like, we love Joe Coy, we love his humor, so I'm like, let's go see it.
I also want to plug another movie that recently came out. I think a lot of people don't realize that Tora Santana, the burlesque performer and the actress, I think they definitely call out her Japanese American background, but her father was actually part Filipino, and she does have that campiness that I'm claiming it for us. That's part of her Filipino-ness. And she had a documentary come out in the past year that you could get on streaming services. Highly recommend. It's such a beautiful documentary.
Oh yeah, I didn't know when it came out. I remember it, coming up on my feed that it was being made, but love to know that it's out and that we can watch it. Yeah, and it's, again, part of burlesque history. And I know, like, just like Lady Mabuhay said about how Filipinos, had to represent a different ethnicity or race in media. I know when I was researching, Forbidden City in San Francisco, there were Filipinos there, but they had to, claim being Chinese to fit in with the rest of the cast there, right? And I'm sure Filipinos weren't the only Asian demographic that had to do that, right? So, all right, we're going to be right back with another discussion topic after this commercial break.
Hi, I'm Jen Ponton.
And I'm Lillian Bustle.
And we're the hosts of All the Fucks,
a podcast about vulnerability.
But it's more than just that. It's nostalgia.
It's unrequited crushes.
It's the mortifying moments that make you want to crawl back inside your own belly button.
Ooh, and somehow it's sometimes about pelicans.
A pelican allegory, if you will.
Oh, I will.
So if your heart has ever felt like a skinned knee,
Oh, you'll fit right in as one of our fuck buddies.
All the
fucks.
fucks. A storytelling podcast wherever you listen.
If we are ready to move on to the next question, I will go ahead and ask that. So it is, how do you respond when a producer says that they would like to create more diverse shows, but not enough performers of color, this is in quotations, apply to the casting call?
Well, being from Ohio, being from a very predominantly white drag scene, I always call out people's bullshit because I'm like, there are so many people of color who, like, if you really want diversity, like, I don't think like you should have people apply. I think like we're also like a smaller enough drag scene that like you can like call on people and be like, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to produce it? I'm also on like I'm on the team of like, you don't need to produce it if you're white and you want like a diverse show. Like, let's say for example, like Black History Month. I really don't think a white show director should be producing and especially hosting a Black show. And that has unfortunately happened here in Columbus. And like, we always call out their bullshit. Like, I think it's crazy, like truly crazy. But again, I just call it out and be like, well, if you really want diversity, like have someone else handle this because you shouldn't be the one handling it if like you really want diversity.
Yeah, your point of like people maybe shouldn't have to apply, like I felt that because, we already have to work so much harder. Like that's just, it's like, that's work when they're already asking that of us to make their show more diverse. There's, with the accessibility of social media, like you can use it like a search engine now. So like if you are going to be, looking and like even just like going down the rabbit hole of like performers and like seeing who's tagged, like put in the work to make your show diverse. That's where I stand on it. Like I put that work in just because I know that I'm not gonna, ask extra labor of someone to make my show diverse personally. If I want to see certain representation which is authentic representation in my show, then I will go out and look for it.
I think Maha made some really good points about having people of color produce more shows, and also not submitting us to just a history month, or a heritage month, and booking us all year round. I've definitely had this question actually come up to me before, and I've definitely said, think outside of the box too. I'm a community organizer by trade, and I think it's important to go outside of your burlesque community and to meet other organizations, like either it be through like the drag community, the LGBTQ community, cultural organizations, because they have untapped talent that they, are happy to promote without fail. And social media exists, as you said. I almost just don't buy it when people say they don't have enough performers of color that can apply to the casting call. I think to myself, I don't think you've put in the work. And I think that's what I read. When I hear that, I read between the lines, and I'm saying, you don't want to do that labor. You're wanting us to do that labor. And that's really something that you should be doing yourself. And that's what I would encourage other producers to do. And it's just, you really need to think outside the box and use social media, as you said. I myself, as a performer and new, I am starting to realize more and more my power as a person of color, in the sense that I know that there was a diversity boycott in February that Coco Burlesque, I think was her name, organized, and it talked about just like, here are the things that we need to do for the month of February to uplift Black performers, namely, and other people of color. And she talked about how, don't attend shows that are just one person of color on a huge billing. And that lit a light bulb in my head. And I decided that I am not going to take bookings that are like more than 6 performers if I'm the only person of color. And even recently I had a booking where I was asked to kid in, and I asked about, what can you describe the diversity of your cast? And there was only one person of color on that cast. And I said, well, I'm not going to take this booking unless you book one other person. And it turns out that producer went out, booked another person of color, and tried to diversify the cast more. And I took the booking. It's not that hard. I think people just need to realize that we have this power to really diversify and to build bigger tables.
Sometimes social media makes things a little too convenient. For example, if you put up a casting call and you only put it up on your social media, you're only going to attract the people who follow your posts, right? So sometimes there are other easier answers. Can you get in touch with someone who is a person of color who might be in a forum that you're not a part of because you're not that POC, and ask them to post the casting call, multiple forums. And I think this is important to know that there are multiple forums for different people of color. There's like a Black forum. There's an Asian American forum. I'm sure there's a Latinx forum. You have to be aware of who is in the burlesque scene and ask around to see if there are any forums that you might not have access to that you can reach out to post your casting. From a practical standpoint, that's essentially just doing the work.
I was about to say, seems like the theme here is do the work. I'm really glad that you brought that up because, again, we are community-based people, and I know that, most POC communities are that way as well. We talk with each other more than we're going to talk with people outside of our community. So if you're going to want your cast to be diverse, ask yourself why, people aren't applying. Reach out to these communities. They will talk with other people in their community. If they can't do it, then they'll find someone else in their community to see if they can be in your show. The other thing that I wanted to bring up as part of doing the work, Leche, when you were talking, it sparked a memory in my head about this one situation where I found out from this producer. They were going to reach out to me, but then they didn't think I would want the gig. They just had assumed that I didn't want the gig, so then they asked another performer instead, a white performer. Now that was I got passed over because there was an assumption that I didn't want it. There was no passing off the autonomy to me to make that decision, right? She made the decision for me. So there was no work in reaching out to me to have that discussion. I don't know if going to this other performer seemed like an easier path for her, but I didn't appreciate maybe I didn't, but leave that up to me, But again, doing that work of reaching out, I get it. It's hard. It's work, but do it. Yeah. So, anybody else want to put in some final thoughts on this?
I don't know if this is going to be another topic question, but I think on the the whole subject of reaching out and having a person of color in your show, it's also a good idea to have a conversation with them to ask how they want to be represented. Like, I don't necessarily need to be known as a Filipino burlesque performer, right? Like, I don't always want that to be my tagline because, you know, I don't know. In my head, I think it's also the way I was raised of not wanting to be othered. I don't want to be pointed out that I'm clearly some kind of Asian, like I said earlier. But, you know, I think that it's important to have that conversation. If you want diversity with me and others in it, have that conversation about how I want to be introduced or, you know, mentioned on stage.
Yeah, like especially with an introduction like yours, where it's so tied to our identity. But I mean, just in general, our intros are our intros. If I know that most, if not all, like tech forms or tech emails or whatever, ask for an intro. Like, you ask for it for a reason. Like, don't change it, you know? But yeah, especially one with as much, like, weight to it as one that like is tied to our identity and our culture, like yours and others that I've heard. That's so important. And honestly, lady, when I heard you talking with hosts about like how to pronounce your name, that inspired me to, you know, be proactive about going up to the host to tell them how to pronounce my name. So I do that all the time now. So I just want to say that because it's important, whether it's, you know, your stage name or your normie name, because I have a very, very Filipino normie name, and I have to be very upfront of like, no, this is how you pronounce it, and be proud of it.
I think that it's important to take on a little bit of a role of educating others. You know, it's the fact of I think that's the nature of, you know, us and other people of color.
Right. So the best thing that we can do is, you know, go with authority and pride when we approach, you know, like with how to pronounce our names and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Something I wanted to add to this topic is that, you know, on the inside of it, like when you are the person of color who is producing these shows. So here in Columbus, I took the role of like having and hosting and producing the AAPI shows here in Columbus or here in Ohio, just because like there aren't a lot of us in Ohio specifically. But when I produce and when I cast the show, I try not to just have like one like race of people from the inside. So like, yes, I would love to have an all Filipino show, but like I need more Filipinos. One, two, it's something that I want to shine, especially for AAPI month. I want to be able to bring light to all different diverse Asian groups and Pacific Islander groups. So like I make sure that I have like a Southeast Asian person. I make sure that I have like a person who comes from who is Korean. But also on top of that, I diversify the acts. So like I always have like a burlesque individual. I always have a drag king. I always have a drag queen, that sort of thing. So making sure that like I diversify that, because I feel like when you focus on like these shows that highlight a certain group of individuals, you also get lost in like having a diverse kind of act. My partner, their name is Robin the Culture. They host and produce Melanated, which is an all Black variety show here in Columbus. But they also do the same thing. They have drag kings, they have burlesque, and you know, like certain different kinds of things. So I try to have that diversity within like a very niche, diverse show.
Maha, you bring up a really good point about like what is expected of us you know, like having a one, like an all Asian show or an all black show, it's it breaks a lot of expectations and barriers of what is expected, or I guess like preconceptions of who we are. And even outside of these like one race shows, right? I think that's a very good rule to go by, because I think producers shouldn't go for, like performers of color that only showcase their, Filipino act. Like if it was us, right? Like they should ask a performer of color to bring their best act, whatever it is. Bring their best. And I think that is really what's going to diversify your show. And I think that's a great point that you bring up. So it's diverse, like defining diversity in representation as well as the art that is showcased is all encompassing for making a well-rounded show, I believe. All right, we're going to be right back with another discussion topic after this commercial break.
Hello, kitty cats. I'm Gemma from Tails and Tassels podcast. This is the show where you learn about the lives of burlesque and nightlife performers, their craft, their cats, and the way the two worlds collide. It's a space for cat-loving creatives with thoughtful reflections, backstage stories, and the occasional feline expert in the mix. 2 full seasons are streaming right meow. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
How have other aspects of yourself, such as your gender, sexuality, disability, etc., affect your Filipino identity or influenced your work in the entertainment industry?
I really push taking up space even more now because I'm 47 and I've gained weight over the last few years. So I am not afraid to show the changes in my body, and I'm also not afraid to talk about, at least in some forums, and also sometimes when I get on the mic, about menopause and how that affects, how your body performs. And so I think that to have all of these check boxes, it really, the whole point is to make people see that these are things that exist and they're visible and they're to be celebrated. They're just stages of life, in addition to the fact that I am a person of color. And I don't shy away from it. It's, yes, certain things are more difficult to perform, as I get older, but that just means that I have to modify. And even doing that, modifying existing acts that I have, for me is taking up space as an aging performer to show that, yeah, I'm not going to do anything that I used to do when I was 20. That would be very dumb. I don't want to hurt myself. So I'm going to modify it to show that, one, I could still do something, but I'm also showing a sense of time and maturity.
Yeah, lady, you touched on several, intersections there, like being a woman of color, a woman, and then an aging woman in this industry, right? Like, it's already like one thing to be a Filipino woman doing burlesque. And then also, like you said, aging is as a woman in society is already so scrutinized. So for you to take up the space as a woman of color and one that is fully embracing, progressing in who you are as like how your body's changing is so beautiful. And also like putting it in their faces. Like people need to really really soak that in every time, and I think they do. You do a great job of that.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll go next. So something that I've been really honing into, especially being a drag entertainer, a Filipino entertainer, and a non-binary person, is a lot of learning and unlearning. So my family, we came to the United States in like the early to mid 90s, and a lot of like our life was about assimilating to American culture. Like, yeah, we still were proud of being Filipino. We still had aspects of our life that was very Filipino, but at the same time, like, I was told not to speak Tagalog. I was told like to like basically unlearn all of that and be American. So as a drag entertainer, it has been like a healing thing to unlearn that like white assimilation, that was pounded into me as a kid, and like relearning Tagalog, relearning Filipino music, relearning being proud of being Filipino. And another thing too, like on a personal level, I really felt like I was running away from being Filipino for a really long time because I didn't really have like Filipino friends growing up. I was really scared that they would just be like their aunts or like their parents, like my aunts and uncles who like would talk shit about me because I was a really queer kid. So you get like those aunts and uncles that like would talk about you and like, wow, you're talking about a kid. So like that made it really hard for me to like have Filipino friends or even want Filipino friends. So that's something that I'm unlearning, is making those friendships with other Filipinos and, being proud of being Filipino. And how does that affect my entertainment life? Well, I have to have those connections. I got to have those relationships with other Filipinos and learn to heal and learn to like recognize, where do we go from this? Like, are we just going to continue the cycle of like being like our moms and dads who are like chismosa and, hating on each other? Or are we going to actually grow and like unite as Filipinos, as Asian American and Pacific Islander people? And are we going to, rise up and like actually do the good work? And as drag entertainers, as burlesque folks, like, are we going to actually like heal and do what we need to do so that we are represented?
Yeah, you talking about all of that, brought me back to Bonga. Honestly, we talked about all of this.
We sure did.
Yeah, one of the things that I have noticed, from talking with other Filipino Americans like we did at Bonga, and just, as I'm connecting with others in the community, is that we went through that phase of rejecting our identity. And it was a big part of, our parents going through like coming here and assimilating. And in a very different way, my parents told me that like I would come home from school as a kid and they would tell me, I would talk about my day and stuff, and then after I would, relay my day or whatever, they would say, oh, you're becoming so American, or you're so American. I'm like, and I was so confused, but looking back and knowing what I know now, like I am American. Like I live here, I was raised here, but I'm also Filipino. Like I'm both. I can be both. And my experiences as a Filipino American identity is so unique. And I think that's what really connects us as a Filipino American community because of that. But very similarly to you and to so many of us, I think in this generation specifically, is that, we've gone through this like decolonization journey of like reclaiming our identity because of that confusion of like, oh, like I can't be, or like I'm my culture is being so forced upon me, or like I don't want to be that, right? But the reason why I was brought so back to bongo, because even just talking about our shared experience like that was healing. That is healing. And, that connection was so beautiful, and, that breaks down those kinds of like distrust that, chisme really like makes you not want to trust other people, other Filipino people in the community, because I get that there's like that through line of like, my kid's better than you, and but we're all trying our best. We really are. And but yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's a really great point. Is drag and burlesque, we're very, I wouldn't say like we're always competitive, but like I come from like a pageant background, so like I've always been really scared of being like compared to other people, because like I did grow up in that sense where like your mom would be like, well, your cousin is a doctor, your cousin's this, your cousin's that. I'm like, I really don't give a fuck. Like, cool, good for them. So like I've healed in a really great spot where like I don't have to feel like I have to compare to other people to be my great self, because I feel like as Filipinos, as Asian Americans, we've already had to deal with that growing up. We don't have to deal with that anymore. So we don't have to compare ourselves to another burlesque entertainer or another drag entertainer. We can just be ourselves, because what we bring is so different and unique because it's us.
Yeah, I always say that my biggest competition is myself. I know I get that competitions and contests or whatever aren't for everyone, and that's fine. I fully embrace them, only for my, like, the fact that I can say that I can do it. I prove to myself that I can do it, because like I said, my biggest competition is myself, and I constantly set the bar higher for myself. That could be harmful at times when I really push myself. And again, that comes from, I think, the culture of our parents, putting the pressure on us from different angles of like, why aren't you like them? You should, achieve more, go harder. But I think I've been able to achieve so much because I've had that inner critic influenced by our experience and culture. Anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, we were just talking about decolonization, and as I've gone through this decolonization journey, the more and more that I learn about my Filipino identity, the more and more other aspects of myself make sense. For instance, I never understood why my parents mixed up genders in English, and realizing like Filipino language is not gendered. And I always, like, I go by she, her, but like gender never really seemed that important to me. And I've had friends say that, like, like you don't, like, it doesn't seem like something that constrains you, and you play with it in costume and you play with it in identity. And I'm just like, well, that just comes naturally. I feel like for, Filipinos who are in touch with their culture, because that's a huge part of it. There's the babalayan who, tend to be women or queer people. And it didn't matter. Like, they were in places of power. And it's just, yeah, the more and more that I learn about my Filipino identity, I unlock more about myself. And even thinking about how sexuality was before colonization, I'm a bisexual woman, and I always wondered, like, why do I feel so uncomfortable with that? And the more and more I learned about Filipino culture, I was like, oh, this is natural for us, to be queer. And that was our default in the Philippines before colonization. And so it's like, this question was really interesting to me, because I was like, the more and more I embrace Filipino identity, the more and more other things make sense. And the more that I think about touching upon what we were talking about, Lady Mabuhay, about just like being a woman and how it really is different being a Filipino woman or an Asian woman or femme in this industry because of how we're exotified and how we are fetishized. And I always, when I talk to other burlesque performers who are either they're people of color or not, I have to explain to them that there is a sensitivity for an Asian person and a Pacific Islander person too, to getting into sex work and, you know, burlesque and this type of work because of the way that we have historically been treated. And so I'm going to suggest some reading because that is what I do in my academic ways. It's Fetishized: A Reckoning with Yellow Fever, Feminism and Beauty by Kyla Yu. Goes all through that, just how the Asian woman and Asian femme experience is very unique, especially in America, because of how we're fetishized and how we're treated. And I think about it throughout pop culture. Like I do a lot of work in decolonizing tiki, and it's really important to me. That's how I started in pinup, and I've done a lot of activism around that, and I'm continuing that with burlesque about how, you know, this exotifies performers and exotifies Asian women in particular and Pacific Islander women and kind of conflates us with each other when we're separate identities. And so, yeah, feel free to feel free to continue to follow me on social media if you want to see more about that. But yeah, I just think about how all of this is related. And so it's hard to disentangle identity with Filipino-ness because it's just all in the same.
Yeah, I absolutely relate to your, connecting with your sexuality and, but going back to your parents, like not like differentiating the genders. So I host Bonga, the all Filipino show that I produce with my cousin Saffron Soleil. And I made a joke, I think it was at the second one, I made a joke about how like Filipinos were ahead of being all inclusive of genders with saying ma'am sir, like just like addressing everyone ma'am sir. Yeah. And then also just like you said, like Tagalog doesn't have a gender, binary or, identification like that. But I appreciate you sharing the reading and like the fetishization. What's funny is that my name is actually a play off of that because like I've always been called babyface, and like Asian women are always expected or seen as almost infantile, right? And always youthful, and in an ironic way, as we do in this art form, I leaned into that. So Bebe, because when I'm on stage, I'm not demure. I am powerful. So it is more of like an ironic play and a full-on satire of who I am as a performer.
The more and more that I talk to other Filipino and Asian performers, I think a lot of us are just taking what they call us and what they say about us and we throw it back into their faces, because when we do that, we show them how wrong they are about us. And I find that really empowering.
Absolutely. I mean, your act lady from this week, you brought it to Bonga. It's one of my favorite acts that you do. If you want to talk about that or, a response to the topic question.
Yeah. So, well, the act is, it's called Little Stinky Kitty, and it's a really fast song that's about 160 beats per minute. It's replete with 8 tassels, and it's just not ladylike. you know, and that's how I build it in the show. It's just not ladylike. It's really, it's in, you know, I mean, I'm twirling my ass, I'm twirling my shoulders, I'm twirling everything in your face, and I'm kind of messy, right? And that's sort of the twist on the whole demure, ladylike, you know, quiet Asian persona that people expect of us, even our own families, you know, whether it's society, you know, American society or our own families, we're expected to behave a very, very specific way. And my act is basically a big fuck you to that.
Yeah. That's why I love it. Anything that says a fuck you, you know, I support it. I think, like you said, Leche, it's empowering. It's you know, it's resistance, right? It changes the narrative, but in the way that, but on our terms, right? And I think that's what is the most important thing about we are showing everyone the way that we want to be represented. And I mean, that is why a big part of why we do this art form, right?
You know, in the realm of decolonization, something that I'm really proud of that me and my grandfather got to talk about before he passed is that being queer is something that's always been a part of us. Like Leche said, it's in our blood. Like, it's something that we can't deny ourselves, and it's something that we can't continue to feel like is a dirty, disgusting part of ourselves. Like, I grew up Catholic, so you know they always told us that being queer is a sin, whatever. But it's something that I've recognized and have done some more research on. Is like we identify a lot closely with like Hawaiian culture and Samoan culture, where they had mahu, which is a gender neutral term, or like what they consider the third gender. And those folks were mystical, magical beings, and folks that took care of the village, took care of like children. And it's weird that like we come to modern day and they are trying to keep queer people away from children. But like there aren't queer people on the Epstein list. So, but like we have to remember that our queerness, especially me as a non-binary person, like that's a blessing to be queer. And it's something that, you know, we can't continue to deny ourselves and deny that it's not real.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, you know, with, I think, more Filipinos embracing queerness, it really, you know, continues that legacy in our culture of like, it's always been a part of us, right? The thing about queerness in Filipino culture, especially from the Philippines, is that bothers me. I've noticed is that, so like my grandmother loves the freaking Filipino like drama shows, and there's always that the token gay character, and it's always the flamboyant, like over the top, like caricaturized gay person, right? And so like what bothered me about how queerness is represented in the Philippines, or even just like it just exists in the Philippines, is that it is, you know, it can be in media, like in the shows. They like, people will say that I will only get my hair cut by bakla, right? But then they'll say that they don't support gay marriage, right? It is, and they will adopt the queer language, because the queer slang, because that is a big thing there too, just like here. I mean, that's actually like there's a term for it there too, about how there's like almost a whole separate slang language for queer Filipino slang that is also merged into, daily language there. So they'll adopt it into their daily language, just like, we say slay, and people don't know where it comes from, specifically queer Black culture, right?
Yeah, my mom talks about that a lot. How like the word sisterette is like how in America in like queer culture, like we say sis. I mean, it's the same thing. Like not cisgender, like cis, like sister. But like it is wild that like they love our language, they love like talking like us, but they don't know where these things come from.
Yeah, but they'll still treat them like outcasts, treat us like outcasts, right? I mean, bonga is from queer slang, like bonga bonga, like meaning extravagant, over the top. And I was very happy that it happened to be alliteration with burlesque, but it was also purposefully chosen as the name of my all Filipino show. But yeah, like I think it's while we are embracing ourselves as queer Filipinos, and then even with each other, I think there's a little bit more acceptance in our community here in the United States. It's definitely still like, at least with our generation, like I know that our parents' generation still struggle with it, but like back home, it's just absolutely caricaturized, and like you said, we're the clown, right?
I naturally tend to err on the side of comedy, but I'm also very aware of how that looks, considering that Asians tend to be used as that comic foil, right? And so when we did Iba Iba Sama Sama, the all Filipinx show here in New York City a few days ago, I kind of toned down my humor and my naturally animated movements, because I didn't want to be that Asian clown that I inadvertently would probably be read as. And it was good to have my co-producer there, because she's a lot more tame in her demeanor than I am. So, if the way I kind of thought about it was, if there's going to be that buddy comedy sort of thing where one is more of the clown, then at least the other one has also got to be. It would be weird if like maybe she was white and I was Filipino and I was the clown. I'm very aware of that perspective. I see, because as we've grown up, we're constantly aware of how people see us, right? So I'm hyper aware of stuff like that.
I was about to say, at least you're both Filipino. But you guys played off of each other so well. It was such a great show, and it was an honor to be a part of. I can't wait to see how you guys grow, who else gets to be a part of it, and who it inspires. Because, another thing that I want to see is, the next generation of Filipino performers, right? Because it's not going to end with us. Right?
I will say about half the audience actually came from my martial arts class. So I take Filipino martial arts, and martial arts tends to lean on the bro side of the spectrum, right? And so I kind of inadvertently made it my mission to like just invite people into my life, because I usually separate. I don't tell a lot of people that I'm a burlesque performer, but I kind of started to feel safe pretty quickly. Like, hey, I would love for you to come see our show, because we're featuring Filipinx performers, and I got a lot of great response from my fellow classmates who said, yeah, like this is making me think about my journey as a Filipino American, or having moved here from the Philippines, and like it was, I even got someone who said, I had no idea that burlesque and drag can be in the same, can share the same stage. I'm like, yeah. And I think that I'm starting to see that in order to not stay in a silo, you have to push that boundary and allow other people in to our space, so they could see how, one, what burlesque is, and two, why it's so important, particularly for showcasing and celebrating identity and different identities.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, opening up the show, burlesque is about storytelling. And then when we tie it in with our identity, it makes it so powerful. And you really brought that in with, the show and the environment that you created. It was great. I think that, like you said, we really need to open that up with more shows like that and really show people that this is, an art form that opens your mind. I think always a sign of good art is one that makes you think and makes you explore more, whether it's of the world or of yourself. But yeah, if we're all good, I think that's the end of our show, guys. We had some really great discussions. I love talking Filipino. I love talking with y'all. This was amazing. I can't wait to keep connecting with you guys after this as well. We're going to go around and please plug your socials, any upcoming shows, anything that you want to say, closing remarks.
Thank you for this really awesome conversation and setting this up. It always touches my heart to be able to not only talk about Filipino culture, but Filipino American diaspora and that experience. And once this show comes out, you'll see me in Colorado, Ohio, and Land of the Sky Burlesque Festival. You can find me on Instagram, Lady Mabuhay, one word. Same with Facebook. I think it's actually Lady Mabuhay Burlesque on Facebook. I'll get around to putting my website back up, but for now, those two.
Awesome. Thank you.
Lache Flan here, and my social is at Vintage Phil FILAM Glam, so Vintage FilAm Glam, representing my Filipino American identity and my vintage style. And you'll find any upcoming shows there, and also co-hosting the Vintage Fashion Challenge all throughout May. So if you're interested in showing off your vintage flair, come join us.
I love that. I've been trying to lean into more vintage retro vibes lately, so I might have to check that out. All right. Maha.
Hi, everyone. This is Maha Jera. So you can follow me on Instagram at Maha, TheeJera. That's Maha the Jera, like Megan Thee Stallion. And then on Facebook, I'm Maha Jera. So I am the reigning Miss Gay Ohio America. I'm the first ever Asian American to be Miss Gay Ohio America. I'm just that's a slight flex. But by the time this airs, I will probably get started with preliminary season. So you'll be seeing me all over the internet. I'm going to start preliminaries all over Ohio. I'm really excited. And also I'm hosting quite a few all AAPI shows in May. So I'm really excited to get that started as well.
Slight flex. No, say that loud and proud. Yes, this was a great show. Make sure you follow everyone, including me, your guest host, Bebe Demure. That is at Bebe Demure, BebeDemure on all the socials. By the time this comes out, I'll probably be in Lawrence, Kansas for the Lawrence Busker Festival. I've gotten into street performing in the last year. So, yeah, come check it out. It's fun if you like street shows. If not, you should. It's fun. Check it out. This was the third episode of the FilAm Takeover. Thanks for joining us at WEView, part of the WEBurlesque podcast network. Make sure you follow WEBurlesque at all the socials and all the platforms. See you next time. Yeah.
Bye. The WEView is a product of the WeBurlesque podcast network, White Elephant Burlesque, and Viktor Devonne. All commentary is that of the creators of said speaking. So if I agree with them, that's great. If you agree with them, that's great too, but that's what they wanted to say. I love them for it. Please support the pod by going to patreon.com/weburlesque or finding some other way via the footnotes, and follow these fabulous entertainers who dared speak up at a time when so many people feel silenced. Love ya.